Hey guys, welcome back to another Dark Cloud 2 video. I say another as in I haven't posted one in a very long time, and that one was pretty much me showing off that I've completed everything in the game. Now, this video is going to show you how to beat the fastest monster defeat times in the later stages of Zelmite Mines, which is some of the harder stages in the game to complete. If you're going for all medals, these stages might actually be the final ones stopping you from getting that medal. And in this video I'll be showing you what weapons you should be using and your playstyle on how you should actually be defeating these enemies. Now, out of all the ultimate weapons, there's what I like to call final weapons. These ultimate weapons outclass all the other final weapons, and you should be using these weapons. Now, what I like to do is use max for these speedruns. I use the Legend Hammer and the Supernova. Supernova is the best all-around weapon in the game. It's ranged, does a lot of damage, has a fast rate of fire, and it can defeat most enemies in Zelmite Mines pretty quickly. And any other enemies that cannot be defeated by the Supernova, the Legend Hammer can pretty much do it easily. And the Supernova is good because of its fast rate of fire, and you can attack enemies from quite a large distance, as you can see in this video. And out of all the guns in the game, it also has the highest stat total with 500 attack and 250 in all the elements. And I use Darkness and Absorption just for that extra damage and healing when you do, 2,000 to 4,000 damage on every enemy. Now, the next gun you should not be using is the Sigma Bazooka. Too low stats, too low rate of fire, doesn't do nearly as much damage on any of the enemies in Zelmite Mines. So you can just ignore this weapon. And the final weapon of all the guns is the Last Resort. It's not even close to being as good as the Sigma's Bazooka. It's the worst out of the three. Has the lowest base stat total. Has the fastest rate of fire though, but it just doesn't do anywhere enough damage, and it doesn't kill the monsters fast enough compared to the other two. Though it is the coolest weapon in the game in my opinion. Now, the Legend Hammer is the same story with the Supernova. Its stats just outclass every other hammer and wrench in the game. And even though it is the slowest attacking weapon in the game, its damage just completely blows everything else out of the water. Now, as for the Big Bucks Hammer, it's a gimmick weapon. Don't use it. Its stats are pretty much half of what the Legend Hammer's is. And it has the same attack scheme as the Legend Hammer, so it's pretty much useless in this game. Now, as for the Grade 0, it also is outclassed every single way in terms of stats with the Legend Hammer. Although its attack chain is longer and it is faster, so you can get stuns off, but you just can't kill enemies as fast as the Legend Hammer can. So that's the weapon you should be using, this Legend Hammer. Now for Monica, she isn't as strong as a speedrun character as Max, but you should be using the 5-star amulet because it has Flame, Chill, Cyclone, Lightning at 300 compared to the Love, which has 250 in all the stats. But their attack scheme is pretty much the same. Same rate of fire, same charge time, but the 5-star amulet overall ends up doing more damage just because it has those 50 extra points in the 4 elemental slots. But you shouldn't be using Monica because Supernova is just better. You don't need to get close to the enemy at all, where you can just shoot them at a distance. So overall, it takes less time than using the amulets if you just stick with Max and the Supernova. And as you can see, the Love doesn't have the same stats as the 5-star amulet, so this one pretty much comes down to stats as well. And as for the swords, I like using the Griffin Fork. It almost has enough DPS as the Island King, but I just think this weapon's more fun to use. It is a faster attacking weapon, so you can get those stuns off faster, but the Island King's forward combos are so broken that it doesn't matter what you do, it'll just outclass in every single way. And as for the 250 smash, it's kind of interesting because a lot of enemies are weak to smash in the game, and out of all the fast attacking weapons, it does the most amount of consistent DPS compared to the other fast attacking weapons. Now, the Island King is probably the easiest sword to get in the game. It builds up from Monika's starting sword, but this weapon it hits like a truck. It does so much damage. Its forward overhead slam has the highest damage in the game, and its attack combo is also pretty fast as for the first two, but it is a slower attacking sword. So that overhead slam is how you should be starting most fights, just because it can knock enemies down, and it does a ton of damage. The Chronicle Sword you shouldn't be using. It's a cool looking weapon, but again, its stats just aren't good enough compared to the Island King. It's that attack stat that really kills all these swords, because all of them have 300 compared to the Island King's 500, and the attack just is so important in the end game. Same story with the Muramasa Sword, another fast attacking weapon where its stats just aren't good enough. But if you want a challenge, actually, using these swords can be kind of fun, but it'll be kind of difficult to beat those times. If you're going as fast as possible, you need a bit of luck. Or skill. Mostly just skill. So, attack chain same as the Griffin Fork and the Chronicle Sword. Now the Atlamelia Sword and the Martin Sword you should never ever be using. The Martin Sword is just the worst sword in the game. And the Atlamelia Sword is the worst ultimate weapon in the game for Monika, because it's just completely outclassed in every single way compared to the Island King. It has the same attack chain, but its stats and attack are just so minuscule compared to the Island King, and you should pretty much never be using this sword unless you like the look of it, or you want the challenge. But it does have that overhead slam, which is a really, really good attack. And the final weapon is very interesting. It has 300 in all of its elemental attack slots, as well as 300 attack. Overall, it doesn't do as much damage as the Island King, as 500 attack is super, super important. You can test this on the mini genies in the final battle. The Island King just does way more damage to them compared to the Dark Cloud, even though they're weak to all the elemental statuses. The 500 attack is just so much stronger that you should not actually be really using this weapon. Although it is the coolest looking sword in the game, in my opinion. And as for the Ripod, just don't use it at all. Use it to get from enemy to enemy if they're really far away, but don't use it. It just does not do enough damage, even though the Supernova Cannon and the Samurai Arms have 1800 and 1600 attack respectively. The elemental stats just don't help them, where they all have 0. The attack just isn't enough to do the same amount of damage as the normal weapons in the game. Now, to run through all these floors, it really heavily depends on luck, and if there's a mimic in the stage, it can also add a minute to your time. But most of these levels take 11 to 13 minutes to clear, but with this setup you should be going about 3 to 5 minutes depending. Now I run Pow as my side character because he shows the map, and if you spawn in a map with a gate, which we do in this case, just leave and come back. It'll make everything a lot easier and faster. But you should also be turning all your Gilda into gold, because you could just leave the floor without losing a ton of money, because gold sells for the same price as you can buy it. So if you lock all your Gilda into gold, you can just lose pretty much no money. Also, bad example, you should be skipping chests like this, where if it says you need a key to open it, just back out of it. Now the Supernova isn't good on every single enemy. This is a good example. I just kind of take that hit, but it doesn't kill the Minotaurs as fast as you like. But as for other enemies, it just completely destroys them. Now this floor does have mimics, so I will be opening all the chests. Now this is a good example, as the Supernova does even less damage to these guys, and there happens to be 2 of them. which is a good showcase of an example of what I wanted to say on why you should be running the Legend Hammer as well. Oh, it has a Minotaur here now, it's unfortunate. But it's a good showcase because we do 9,000 to the Bone King and 5,000 to the Minotaur when we were doing, you know, 800 and 400 to these guys at the Supernova. So that's a good example of cleaning up with the Legend Hammer for all the enemies that the Supernova can't handle. And you should be guard cancelling as well. That's just kind of like a basic thing that I expect everybody to know. If you don't, it's pretty much you attack, and then right after you finish attacking, you guard to reset your attack chain, and that allows you to attack way faster. Now, Spinning Saucer is probably one of the most challenging enemies in the game, as the Ride Pod isn't good at this point anymore, and that's normally a Ride Pod enemy to kill, but the Supernova can just take care of him really easily from a distance. Also, you should be running at a diagonal angle. You should never be running straight forward, as for some reason you just run faster that way. I learned that from watching speedrun channels of this game. So it's a very interesting thing. As I completely mistimed that attack. Yeah, that's embarrassing. And don't worry about picking up ABS either, that'll just slow you down. If you're maxed out weapons, you really don't need ABS. And this is a good example of here of just letting the Supernova just clean up for you as I go down to 6 HP. And we get the rest of the key. But you should never actually really be running stages that have gates on them. And here I switched to the Ride Pod just because it's faster than walking using the buggy legs. So I'm just going to speed up here for simplicity's sake. But it's really important to kind of have an idea of how you're going to run through the map. That's why POW is so important. You can kind of plan routes and make sure they're kind of linear. You don't want super branching out peninsulas in the maps that just take forever to go down, only to realize that there's no enemies in there and you have to go all the way back up. Oh, we went down to 1 HP there, but we got 77 back because it just heals so fast. Now the Mimics are probably one of the hardest enemies in the game, but with the Supernova at a distance, they don't stand any chance. That's why the Supernova is so good. It just cleans everything up super easily. Last enemy of the stage. And there you go. I beat my previous record. Wasn't really trying that hard, but I'm sure if you can optimize it, you can easily lower these times. I beat about 14 seconds, which isn't bad. Probably could go lower. Not gonna brag or anything, but I probably could. Actually, that was bragging pretty much. So that's pretty much how you handle these final stages. Just a little bit of luck and the proper setup should make these final stages really easy. And you shouldn't really have a problem with them